We have with us Mr. Vali Nasr, one of the foremost experts of the Middle East region, of Iran, of the conflict that's going on. Sir, thank you so much for speaking to NDTV. Let me start by asking you, it's day 7, it's been 7 days already of the conflict. In your assessment, where do you think things are likely to go from here on?
I mean, we've had a lot of devastation already, particularly in Iran. It has a sense of that is systematic bombing of cities, and particularly Tehran, with a lot of damage that's being done to the country, as well as its military bases and missile and other infrastructure. But despite the campaign that Israel and the United States have carried out, Iran is not ready to throw in the towel and is hitting back with drones and missiles, and particularly aiming them at U.S. bases in the Gulf, as well as countries of the Gulf region, cities of the Gulf, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Riyadh, and Doha. And so the war does not seem to be slowing down. And
in fact, it's escalating, sir. That's what it looks like.
It's escalating to some extent. Obviously, the United States and Israel have enormous amount of firepower, fighter jets, offensive weapons. Where they might be running into gradual shortages is in terms of interceptors against Iranian drones and Iranian missiles. Iran, on the other hand, does not have much in terms of defense against the attacks, but it has missiles and particularly has a lot of drones. So there is a calculation here about, will Iran run out of drones and missiles first, or would Israel and the United States face a shortage of their air defense systems against missiles and drones? That in a good measure will decide which side would be ready to accept a ceasefire.
Who blinks first? But even now, today we are talking at a time when there have been fresh attacks that have taken place on the US airbase in Qatar. Even as there have been a lot of voices of concern and even disappointment from the Gulf region, saying that how is it that Iran is continuing to escalate attacks on its territory. Dubai itself saw about over 100 drone strikes. In that backdrop, sir, the fact that there's been a complete breakdown of communication between the Gulf countries themselves, how important is that going to play out in terms of finding some sort of a resolution, some potential cessation of hostilities?
I mean, this is very unfortunate for the Gulf countries. They're now caught, if you would, in the middle of this conflict. I mean, they're home to the U.S. bases, which Iran is targeting. And at the same time, I think Iran finds that it cannot put any pressure on the United States directly. It's dealing with the world's premier military superpower, but it can put pressure on US's economic vulnerabilities. And the Gulf is an economic vulnerability for the US. In other words, by attacking the Gulf countries, by attacking tankers, shipping, LNG terminals, oil facilities, which are vital and part of the Gulf countries, it is basically raising economic premium, risk premium in the West, price of oil and gas, inflation, shortages of varieties of goods that go through the ports of UAE into the world market. So it's not, Iran is basically attacking the energy and trade supply chain that the Gulf is so vital to.
Brings me to ask, is it working? Because these are pressure tactics. On one end, hitting out at US assets, and on the other end, targeting and paralyzing and disrupting energy routes, shipping lines. The question is, are these pressure tactics working? Because that will help us find the answer to when this stops.
We shall see, but it's working more than during the June war, when Iran only retaliated against Israel, and it found that American bases and ships in the Gulf were used as the first line of defense by Israel, and then air defenses in Jordan as a second, and then only if the Iranian missiles got through these two lines, then they would confront Israel's Iron Dome and Sling of David and THAAD missiles, etc. So Iran decided in this war it's pointless for a weaker country to exhaust all of its energies trying to penetrate Israel or penetrate U.S. defenses around U.S. aircraft carriers, and that ultimately it is better for it to go after where the U.S. has vulnerability. And what it exposed in this war is that the U.S. is very good at defending Israel. and Israel is very good at defending itself, but the U.S. is not actually very good at defending its own bases, and it definitely had not thought about how it's going to defend its allies in the Gulf. And whereas Iran has to damage Israel with sophisticated missiles, which has a limited number of, it can wreak havoc in the Gulf and attack U.S. bases, radar postings, etc., with very cheap drones. And so it's a strategic calculation Iran is doing, that the only way in which it can actually retaliate in this war in a meaningful way is not against Israel itself. It's against the U.S.
Which brings me to ask, that's a very important point you made, sir, that America is able to protect the interests of Israel very effectively, but not its own assets so effectively. Two questions. One, where do you see the drone warfare from here on going? Because it's essentially become a cheap drone-led warfare that's taking on. How do you see that now reshaping the entire contours of the war? And the second thing is, which I wanted to ask, was the fact that there are casualties mounting. You are in DC, you understand that there is only so much of political stomach that any leader has when it comes to, body bags, so to say, that start coming in.
Well, that political calculation in DC is going to be made by one person, which is President Trump. And I do think there are vulnerabilities because he made no explanation about why this war was necessary. He didn't prepare the American people about why the United States is going to war. And, something like Venezuela, which is quick in, quick out, no American casualties, is very different from a war that could potentially push up the price of energy, create shortages, cause inflation ahead of midterm elections, not even to speak about body bags. So the political consequences is difficult to gauge, but that's exactly what this war is portending to do. On the drone front, ultimately what Iranian drones have shown is that the air defense systems that the Gulf countries and the United States has put around its bases, first of all, has an economic disadvantage against the drones. Every Iranian drone, maybe $10,000–$20,000 to build, requires millions of dollars in air defenses to bring down that one drone. And then secondly, that there is only a finite amount of supply available. And so the Gulf countries are running out. The U.S. is basically unable to resupply them. Resupplying them will impact resupplying Ukraine in its war against Russia. So there is no short-term solution to the Iran drone problem.
Final question, sir, which is that what really are the cards that Iran is backing on? We've spoken about the leverage, we've spoken about what they are hitting out in terms of American vulnerabilities, but what is the big, cards that Iran is really banking on? Because they also have a leadership vacuum. They also cannot continue this for long because of public sentiment as well.
It's very true, but I think for Iran, the definition of success here is survival. The United States has gone after basically breaking Iran's back. Israel's intention is probably to degrade the Iranian state completely, take away all of its military capabilities, break it down, if you would, effectively. And so I think the Iranian state finds that it's fighting for survival, that the country is fighting for its survival. So it is essentially bracing itself for a way in which it can survive beyond a week, beyond 2 weeks, beyond 3 weeks, beyond 4 weeks. Because the longer the war goes on, the more air war will become purposeless, right? Israel, after 2 years of essentially leveling the entirety of Gaza, is still admitting that Hamas is still there. And even, you kill the leadership, after that, the targets become less and less and less. Then you bomb all the military facilities. Then the air war begins to become less effective, other than just doing random destruction. You run out of targets, and if the state is still standing, then it comes to a fateful decision. Does the United States actually invade Iran? Or how does it handle the fact if the air war doesn't realize its goal? So Iran's whole aim is to survive the air war. Is to basically get the United States to a point that after spending $1 billion a day, let's say for 3-4 weeks, the Iranian state is still there, Islamic Republic is still there, and they haven't been able to force regime change. They still don't know where its 400 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium is. Iran still has capability to build missiles and drones, and so that would be the definition of success for Iran. That's the end goal that Iran is striving for, just surviving.
All right, so we leave it there. Thank you so much for speaking to NDTV.